Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys. I'm Christian Madak, and on the show, I talk with the marketing leaders behind some of today's most interesting brands. We get into their career paths, how they think about marketing, and how they work with agencies. Freeosk is helping brands turn in-store product discovery into a more measurable retail media experience, combining sampling, digital media, shopper engagement, and attribution. Dil Fernando brings an unusual mix of radio, entrepreneurship, CPG innovation, brand strategy, and experiential retail media to her role as CMO. Dil, welcome to CMO Journeys.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So you started in radio and music before moving into brand marketing and now the C-suite. What did being on air teach you about audience, timing, storytelling that is still showing up in how you're leading today?
Yeah, it's not exactly where you think of most CMOs start their career, but they're quite similar in that for me, I think radio taught me attention is earned. That is the number one part of radio is when you hit that commercial break, you don't want someone tuning out. And I think in the CPG space, it's very similar. There's so many options for shoppers to check out another brand, another category. It's all about how do you create experiences that keep people tuned in, that keep people wanting more, and in some instances actually change their behavior or taking action.
Yeah. So you also started something called Bandstand Live and a record label, from what I understand as well.
Yeah.
What did entrepreneurship teach you that maybe if you took just a traditional marketing path probably wouldn't have?
A lot of resilience, tenacity, getting real scrappy. I think being an entrepreneur, if anyone has tried that before, you know you wear many hats, and it's a real wonderful way to understand business from every perspective. And what's interesting is when I went to business school, Christian, I thought, oh, everyone here has already had these experiences and they all want to be entrepreneurs. And I think a big part of it is you just got to jump in and do it. And that's sometimes the best way of learning.
Yeah. So you ended up making I would consider it a real pivot from that media and music background. You mentioned business school and then brand management. Was there a moment where this really felt like a big leap? You mentioned that in business school you were maybe a little, intimidated at first, but, was there another moment that, you really kind of maybe wondered, did I make the right decision here?
For sure. I wanted to get into big CPG or a big company that had those big teams, more resources, budgets to do big activity. And I think there were moments where I felt, wow, am I over my ski tips? But I think that's kind of a common thing that lots of folks who are in career transitions feel. I was really fortunate to have amazing cohort of classmates and, really get some strong educational background. And then my internship was actually at Molson Coors, then Miller Coors, which is where I went full time for a few years after that.
Yeah. So you mentioned Miller Coors, and you, from what I understand, built and launched the company's first marketing incubator and ran experiments across things like e-com and delivery, proximity messaging, et cetera. What did that chapter really teach you about how big companies can actually innovate?
Yeah, there was a time, and I think maybe still going, where some of the CPG companies had these dedicated funds to really understand the cutting edge of where consumer technology was going and emerging touch points. And it is such a valuable resource to be able to remove those traditional guardrails and allow teams to explore and be nimble within large companies. And it's possible. I think that the hard thing is then getting that buy-in and being able to scale the things that actually work. But I think much like the music industry, if you're not willing to look at where change is headed, any industry is going to get disrupted in ways that maybe you don't want to happen. So it's important for those kinds of innovation pipelines to exist.
Sure. And what might you have taken away from that experience that you're using today at Freeosk?
Oh, great question. I think I've always enjoyed foresights and looking ahead. And I think for us at Freeosk, we are in a space that is in high growth and also high change. And so working on the incubator on the CPG side, really understanding where things are evolving to and trying to stay a few steps ahead of the competition, but also just where technology is going and how can that not just be a shiny toy, but really enrich the shopper experience and also be an asset for the marketing teams.
Yeah. You mentioned that you had some really great classmates in your cohort, some great education. Is there, I don't know, a specific boss that you had or a leader, a mentor, something along the way that, really shaped and influenced you?
Yeah, I hope she sees this. But Jackie Woodward was such a role model for me. She had an incredible marketing career, and I think those of us were a lot of fangirls of hers. But she really inspired me to lean in on spaces that, at the time, for the beer industry, we were maybe more reserved about. And it was exciting to have a leader and a female leader who had been there and really encouraged folks to take those risks and to challenge the norm.
Yeah. I hope Jackie's listening as well, actually. So you went obviously then from CPG and beverage innovation into Freeosk, which really sits at the intersection of retail media, sampling, shopper data. What attracted you to that move?
Sorry, could you ask the question again?
What attracted you to make that move from CPG to Freeosk?
Yeah. Again, not a traditional thing to go from brand side to provider side. I met
Yeah.
Freeosk actually when I was working on digital incubation and looking at new vendors. And I remember I was at South by Southwest. There was a kiosk there, and I saw this. And my first reaction as a consumer was like, "Oh my gosh, what is this machine? It's so cool." And then with my marketing hat, oh my gosh, what is this thing? This is so cool. And I've always been a fan. When I was launching some of the innovation products on the CPG side, stayed in contact with Freeosk, and they were at a point where they were evolving from being just a sampling company into really being a media platform. And I was at a point in my career where I was ready to take on something new, get back to something entrepreneurial. And so it was really just an alignment of the right on both sides.
Yeah. So you're now the CMO, but you were there for a number of years leading marketing. When you stepped into this new role, what changed in your mandate?
The team grew first and foremost. So it was an opportunity to not only continue to own the brand, own our corporate communications, our evolving positioning, but also I had a chance to bring in the marketing analytics under my side, which was great coming from brand management. That is what I believe good storytelling is about. Data driven stories really move the needle. And so it was important for me to have that sort of expanded purview.
Yeah. So beyond that purview, what did you think had to be true maybe in that first year for you to feel like you were being successful?
Yeah. I think being successful my first year as CMO really was being able to demonstrate impact of the changes. When you come into a new company or a new role and you are a catalyst for change, that can feel uncomfortable for cross-functionals or for leadership teams. And so to keep communication really clear, really tight, take people along for the journey, which isn't always common for as a former entrepreneur. I'm used to sort of being heads down and just go at it. But with Freeosk, I'm working with the co-founders who are also entrepreneurs, making sure everyone is understanding where we're going and then demonstrating those milestones along the way.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the co-founders being entrepreneurs. Do you feel that entrepreneurship background that you do have, lends yourself to be more valuable and align maybe culturally better than maybe others that didn't have that background?
For sure. I think there is a spirit of scrappiness that exists in companies of our size, but also in industries like ours that are changing fast. It's not for everybody. And so there's a different kind of marketer that enjoys that fast pace innovation, ready to disrupt. And I think that's really been an asset for me.
Yeah, yeah. So from the outside, Freeos seems really to be moving away, as we've discussed, from a sampling business to more of a, I guess you could say, broader experiential retail media story. And I'm curious, like, how much pressure is there to make that positioning clearer for the brands, for the retailers, and for even your internal teams?
Yeah. As I mentioned, it's really important to bring people along for the ride. So internally, that's been the number one is making sure our teams understand that we are a different kind of company. We are
Yeah,
not just sampling, but we are a platform. And what does that mean to intake more volume of media or to operate cross-functionally differently? And then externally, we're really focused on retailers and retail media networks, and we're carving out a new space within the next phase of retail media. So I think experiential marketing, experiential media, all of these words have different meanings. And so it's been really important for us to have a very clear proposition and to continue to deliver that.
yeah. And what does the team look like inside?
The the Freeosk team overall,
Your marketing team.
Yeah, the marketing team, I essentially have three groups within marketing. So I have partnership management, which is really tasked to be great partners to our retailers to help bring new products to market and to make sure that our existing partnerships continue to be fruitful and productive both sides. Then I have our insights and media analytics team. So that's not only our campaign reports, but also looking ahead at new insights that we can deliver for retailers as well as the brands. And then, of course, the traditional brand management of Freeosk as well.
Sure, sure. And about how big is the team in total then?
7.
About 7. Okay. Small but mighty, I'm
Small and
sure.
mighty, yes.
Awesome. So how, especially with that team, how do you balance the need for scale and consistency with, the need to keep the shopper experience feeling fresh?
Yeah. Well, we have internal resources that our greater consumer experience team is a big part, as well as our product team as my cross-functional partners to make sure that we are revisiting the experience, the product lineup, and making sure it not only is financially viable and productive, but also creating something unique for the retailers that is incremental and also ensuring that we're delivering an amazing experience for shoppers.
Yeah, yeah. And tell me a little bit about, what you're seeing change, the way brands are maybe evaluating in-store media today and sampling compared to a few years ago even.
Yeah, I think we're still in the like kind of the messy middle, Christian, that we're seeing planning still happen in traditional senses with sort of your ATL above the line, below the line happening in silos. But I think those things are coming together to be more efficient for brands, but also to be more cohesive as an experience for shoppers, to make sure that campaigns are coming to life in the best way, regardless of channel or, um, you know, content, and to make sure that it is really delivering the most.
Gotcha. And with all the changes that are happening and kind of this journey that you're on, and you mentioned the messy middle, where do you see yourself expecting to increase your own marketing spend over, say, the next 6 to 12 months? And what needs to be true for you to really justify that investment?
I think for us, as we continue to focus on retailers and retail media networks, the B2B spaces and touch points will continue to be really important. So LinkedIn, getting to the right kinds of conferences, making sure we're getting the right face time with those key stakeholders will be really critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about so what is sort of the conference strategy then?
Sure. I think first and foremost, the low hanging fruit is attending the right kinds of events to make sure that we are just even organically having connections with people that we know or people that we're trying to get in touch with. And then, I like to have 1 to 2 white papers be released a year. So we've done that in the past. And then that gives us an opportunity to have fresh content to bring kind of meaningful value when we take the stage, whether it's panel discussion or a presentation.
Sure. And is there a sales team that, in addition to this partner team, or is the partner team essentially your sales team? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do have a sales team, and their roles have continued to evolve as well as we've been looking at an extension of retailers and retail media networks. So we are really taking on more of a consultative role with the retailers, our men's sales team. In the case of Sam's Club, for instance, we are really viewing ourselves as the in-club experts. So whereas traditional retail media has been focused online, offsite, we are coming in and really helping to connect those dots and show how the in-store audience, as huge as it is really a big opportunity. And how do you drive those interactions from offline to online and back?
Yeah. What would you say has been most challenging in the role that you had?
Yeah, I think the fact that the retail media space is still evolving and in many ways being defined and redefined, the challenge is uh, everyone sort of needs to have a willingness to think differently about media. And I think those that are willing to do that are the ones that are going to benefit. So we see those retail media networks that are already thinking about holistic experience. They're not just using omnichannel as a buzzword, but they're really delivering against it. They're really thinking about measurement and memorability at scale. That's, I think, that the critical piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. As you've obviously stepped into the CMO role, you've been at the company for a while, but I'm curious what maybe now that you've taken on some more responsibilities, What's taking more of your attention up right now than maybe you expected?
Hmm. I don't know that anything has surprised me taking on the CMO role. I'm a really team building and building individuals and their skill sets is really important to me. I think that's how you um, create long-lasting employees. There's that phrase, people leave their managers, not companies. So it's important to me that I'm investing in the time in our talent. But I think when you get to the C level, there's a whole other world of um, challenges and opportunities that you don't always get to see when you're on the other side of the curtain. And so I think it's been a fun challenge to be with the leadership team where we all sort of wear each other's hats. We all have to think as business minded individuals and not just our functional expertise, but to really think about the business from all aspects.
Yeah, yeah. What maybe is one of those challenges that you mentioned, and maybe what's one opportunity that you're especially excited about, or one that you're especially trying to unpack right now, just given that you're moved into that role.
Yeah, I think for us, and I'm sure other folks who listen and follow you, Christian, probably feel the same way that when you're when your positioning shifts or when your audience is shifting and your business model is shifting, that's can be a really big challenge. And to stay focused on what are the opportunities and not get distracted by small things that might seem like a flash in the pan, but make sure that you're really going after the biggest bets, both for you and for your partners. So I think that has been something that has been exciting and has been a challenge as we've been thinking about how do we work with retail media networks differently and in a way that feels really complementary and really easy for our partners.
Sure, sure. So, a question I like to ask: if you could wave a magic wand and you could pull together a small group of really smart marketers for an off-the-record discussion, what's the one topic that you'd want the room to help you think through right now?
Um, I love this question. I would love to understand how we can get CMOs in particular on the brand side. And I've been on the brand side, so I know the sometimes we stay focused on the ways that things have always been done. So we think about big budgets, big marketing, big scale. So that should be TV. And as we think about how our upper funnel, lower funnel, traditionally how those were planned, if we can think about them differently, I'd love to um, understand from the CMO's perspective, how can we expedite that thinking? How can we disrupt faster? How can we get to more efficient planning processes and really help CMOs understand that the in-store space is the biggest audience. It's basically Super Bowl audience every week.
Yeah,
Traditionally not as sexy as Super Bowl ads, but it is such an important place. And having been on product innovation side, I know how much blood, sweat, and tears would go into packaging. And we think about every little asset in store. That is a huge opportunity. And so how do we get people to embrace it and think differently about in-store? That it can also be really brand building. It can be creating demand, not just capturing it.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. So we have a lot of agencies that listen to where we're at, and I'm curious. When you described your marketing teams around 7 people, how do you decide what capabilities you're going to build internally, and then maybe where there are outside partners like agencies that could be brought in and add some real leverage? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I like to stay more flexible in that sense and have a roster of really great functional agencies that I can pull in. So, because our needs have been changing pretty rapidly over the last 5 years I've been here, it's important for me to have enough adequate internal skill sets that we can take what an agency builds for us and keep it going. But really, I look to outsource a lot of that great thinking with companies that have done it before.
Yeah, and are you working with agencies right now, or?
We do have some smaller agencies, so much different than the world I came from big CPG.
Yeah.
And we've worked with design agencies, we've worked with website creation agencies, with strategy consultants. What's been great, again, at this sort of size of our company, getting to work with a lot of really nimble kinds of thought leaders that are in the market.
Yeah. Where do you sit then on the spectrum of like agencies that might be specialized versus those that offer maybe full service capabilities?
I probably carry this belief from big brand days where we had your agency of record and then there were multiple agencies. And I do think while there's efficiency to be had in a one-stop shop, there is something to be said about functional expertise that can act as an orchestrator across other spaces. So that might start with a PR team, that might start with a brand strategy team. I think it can kind of go from anywhere, but I think of who is really demonstrating that strategic critical thinking that I need in this specific moment, and then how can I equip them to be the orchestrator of the other elements that need to take place.
Yeah, yeah. So as you think about your business and, where agencies could potentially become more valuable to you over the next, 12 to 18 months, let's say, maybe not even just on the needs you have right now, but where the business is headed, where do you think agencies may play a part in that?
Yeah, I think that agencies have such an important role. And I know many probably worry about AI and being replaced. I see it the exact opposite. I think the human connection and the thought leadership that agencies can provide right now, at least in our space specifically, is so critical. So those that can understand how to connect the dots, again, like I mentioned, between what's happening online to what's happening in store, that can connect analytics to creative, that can understand that these are not mutually exclusive elements. You can be memorable and measurable. You can create great assets that live in store, not just on TV. Those are the agencies that are really going to do well, I think, in this next wave of retail media.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see some areas maybe because you're using AI internally, or maybe just what you know in the industry, but what areas do you think maybe AI will start to replace certain capabilities of agencies?
I think there's a level of planning that probably will be replaced. I think agentic commerce, while it's still really early, there's it's going to be really disruptive for how we think about how shoppers find a product page. And
Hmm.
so anybody that's sort of in that middle layer that is trying to optimize those touch points, I think needs to rethink really what's happening with the shopper journey within AI, and then how can you best support that differently.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Are there any, use cases of you guys using AI there that you'd be open to sharing?
There isn't anything specific there, but what we've recently uncovered, and we have extended our platform beyond the kiosk into other kinds of physical form factors. And one of them is a tablet that is on what you would think of like traditional demo carts. And the purpose of that is to not only modernize sampling, but also it captures ratings and then feeds it into PDPs. So for many brands, ratings and reviews is a very important part of the marketing mix because that is what the bots and the AIs are pulling towards to get shoppers onto those product pages. So our extension of our platform, I think, is something that can be maximized for brands as they think about AI. That's probably
Yeah,
our first kind of foray into that.
sure, sure. So when you think about, you mentioned you've worked with some agencies and may again in the future. When you're hiring an agency, I'm curious, like, what feels riskiest? Is it that the strategy is wrong? Is it the execution breaks down, or they don't understand your business, or something else? Like, what's been your experience?
My experience is that great work previously doesn't always translate to other industries. And
Mm,
so I think it's really important for anybody that's evaluating an agency to make sure they not only have a functional expertise, but also understanding of the market that you're in. I think for us, that's been a really important one, or at least a willingness to dive into it because it's not something you can fake. You really have to understand, get into the weeds, get messy to be able to produce great work.
yeah, yeah. Any tips for other CMOs that are, looking for agencies that maybe you've stumbled across over your career, and how to find some great ones?
I think your network. I've gone back to people that I've worked with previously in my other roles, and when they've gone off creating new agencies or gone independently as consultants, that's been one of the best resources. It's people that you know and trust, and you instantly have a relationship with, and I think that can go a long way into to setting everyone up for success.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we hear that all the time, from agencies is that they had some level of relationship with the marketer. Maybe they moved to a different role, or they got promoted, et cetera. But then there's also agencies that they hit like a wall, where their network does kind of dry up, and they're looking for the next piece of business, and a lot of them are doing like cold outreach, and some of them say it's just not working. I'm curious if there's been a situation where maybe someone reached out to you cold, and you didn't know them from your network, and was there a situation where that happened? And if it was, what did maybe they do differently that made them cut through from all the others?
Sure. I think maybe more in the insights or survey space where someone has reached out with not a hard sell, but just something that was really relevant. And I call them gifts. This is
Hmm.
even a great way to manage up is like put a gift in the sense of a really great nugget, an insight, a data point in someone's inbox. That will get someone to stop. And if it's something that is truly original and relevant to the client, that will likely start at least curiosity, if not a conversation.
Sure. I love that term gift. I really like that. I might have to adopt that. I think it's a great way to look at it. And then I know you don't mean like a physical present, gift, but from a
Right.
thought leadership type of
Yeah.
perspective, or something that's going to help them perhaps do their job better, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really love that.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of winding things down here, we've talked a lot about, work. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what energizes Dill outside of work.
I think you can take the girl out of music, but you can't take the music out of the girl. So I still love going to concerts. When I can play music, I'm trying to get back to that. And I think anything around arts and creating things is always sort of my go-to.
Okay, well, I got to ask, what instrument do you play?
Oh, I would use play very lightly. I grew up playing the piano and then started dabbling with guitar and drums
Okay,
a few
got
decades
it.
ago.
And then, okay, dead or alive, what
Mm.
is an artist that you would love to see? And what venue would you like to see them at?
Oh gosh, David Bowie at a very small venue, and it escapes me which one it would be, but something really kind of
Something
historic.
small and intimate, though. Yeah, love that. Love that. Yeah, David Bowie. I like that. It's a great one. Well, Dil, this has been amazing. I really appreciate the time here. I know you're very busy, so I do commend you for coming on the show. So thank you again.
Yeah.
And for everybody that's watching, don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for the conversations that are shaping marketing leaders and what's next. I'm Christian Badak. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.